Ethel and Julius Rosenberg, true to their vows to each other, true to the people of America, true to the poor and the powerless, showed that they were more powerful than their powerful jailers, more powerful than their executioners. They denied to the military-industrial complex the false confessions to treason that were intended to feed the false trials that would lead to more executions like their own. We mourn them, we celebrate them, and one day, perhaps very soon, we will exonerate them. We will remove the false stain of treason from their names. The National Committee to Reopen the Rosenberg Case is the great-grandchild of the Committee to Secure Justice in the Rosenberg Case, born in the fall of 1951, 6 months after the Rosenbergs were sentenced to death and Morton Sabel to 30 years imprisonment. The dozen or so members of that committee described themselves as God's second choice for the mission that they undertook of securing a new trial for the defendants or clemency for the Rosenbergs. Because they were, like most of the people in this audience, everyday people, they did not have the ear of anyone famous or powerful in politics or in any other area of life. They had no money to speak of. They were aware that they were very unimportant people. And my dear Emily said at one early meeting, I agree that we are all unimportant to people, but I think we are exceptionally unimportant, and that'll be our strength. And it was. By the fall of the following year, scores of thousands of letters, telegrams, and petitions for clemency began arriving at the White House every week. We had published and distributed 10,000 copies of the trial record to members of Congress, editors of mainstream newspapers and journals, and to prominent members of the Jewish, Catholic, and Protestant hierarchies. Over the winter and spring that followed, we gained the support of over 3,000 Protestant ministers, Pope Pius XII, and a number of prominent rabbis. Clemency had the support of a Republican member of the Senate Committee on the Judiciary, Senator William Langer of North Dakota, and the support of the United States Ambassador to France, C. Douglas Dillon. In the end, in the eye of the storm created by the atomic-driven military-industrial complex that was bent on destroying all opposition to their dreams of world conquest, 3 million Americans, knowing that they might suffer for it, wrote to the White House in support of clemency. But in the second half of June 1953, despite the support of 3 justices of the Supreme Court and large sections of public opinion in the United States and throughout the world, we Americans and the human race lost Ethel and Julius Rosenberg to the malignant powers that dominated our government. They had been tried in a court in which tangible and credible circumstantial evidence was replaced with another kind of evidence, the ancestry of their parents, their politically incorrect beliefs, and yes, their ethnicity. 9 months after the Rosenberg trial, with its all-Jewish cast of defendants, the New York Times reported that America's top law enforcement officials had announced that persons of Anglo-Saxon stock were very unlikely to betray America. In 1994, a trusted Anglo-Saxon law enforcement official, Aldrich Ames, a top CIA officer, was indicted and found guilty of espionage for the Soviet Union, which had paid him $4 million for giving them the names of American spies in the Soviet Union, resulting in the executions of the agents he had betrayed. His sentence, life imprisonment. About a dozen more Soviet spies were found in that era, all of them in the FBI, the CIA, the Army and the Navy. None were Jews. None were sentenced to death. But there were victories also, three of which I will mention. Ethel and Julius Rosenberg, by what they saw as their duty to humanity, withheld from the malignant powers in government the means to conduct the trials and executions they had anticipated mounting from false confessions to treason. And Morton Sobel made it known that he would sit in his lonely prison cell for 30 years rather than make his own false confession to treason. Let me give you a number to go with those anticipated trials and executions. In 1951, the Department of Justice had told Congress it was preparing to indict more than 20,000 traitors to the United States. Do you know how many of the 20,000 were tried for espionage and treason after taking the lives of the Rosenbergs and the freedom of Morton Sobel? Not one. The young Rosenbergs and their young friend Morton had echoed an unforgettable slogan of the Spanish Civil War: "No pasarán, no pasarán." Beyond this line, you shall not pass. You will take our lives, but no more. The young parents of two children and their friend, also a young father, gave up life and freedom so that this promise would be kept. A second victory. To the outrage of the malignant bureaucrats and their nightmarish dreams of repression and world dominion, public opinion forced them to free Morton Sobel 12 years before he would have completed his 30-year sentence. And a third victory. For 57 years, the Rosenberg-Sobel cause has been kept alive in book-length studies of the case, in novels, plays, films, music, and at the annual memorial meetings conducted by devoted women and men. And all of us remember Eric Katz, who for 50 years kept putting the Rosenberg-Sobel cause in the public eye through letters to newspapers, picket lines, and demonstrations. There has not been a year since the Rosenbergs and Morton Sobel made their profound sacrifice of life and freedom that has passed in silence. The generation to which I belong agreed with President Franklin Roosevelt that we have nothing to fear but fear itself. It was my generation that defeated Nazi Germany, Imperial Japan, and Fascist Italy. And it was my generation that against the rage of the powerful mounted a world-inspiring and almost successful movement to save the Rosenbergs. Most of my generation, including the love of my life, who often addressed you in far more eloquent words than I can, are no longer with us. So, my friends, you are God's second choice. You are the choice to go on with the mission because God's first choice ain't never going to show up. Here is what the 2 or 3 generations in this hall must do. You must win exoneration for the couple who died and the man who gave us freedom, so that none of your parents would be among the 20,000 men and women whose lives and freedom a servile Department of Justice announced it would take. You are here because 3 humble human beings gave their lives and freedom for you. They do not ask you to mourn or celebrate them. They ask only that you do for yourself and your children and grandchildren what they did for you. Some of you would not be here if not for them. Why would exoneration make your lives freer and more stable and more certain not to precipitously rob you or your children of freedom and possibly of life? It would go a long way to restore tangible evidence to its paramount place in trials for loyalty. It would cast out religion, ancestry, and political opinions as tokens of guilt. It would restore due process in the Constitution to their rightful place in the courtroom. In 2010, we began the search for the legal steps and the support of public opinion to achieve our mission. We need your help, we need your thinking, we need your energy, and we need your financial support, and we need your faith. I will finish with that beautiful Spanish slogan again, followed by a new one. No pasará, no pasará. Exoneration, yes. Exoneration, yes.